Let's get into the story around Iraq. They're planning to return to the global bond markets next year, and that's in a bid to raise $2 billion to finance its budget deficit. The central bank governor, Ali Al-Allaq, spoke with Bloomberg's Tracy Alloway in Abu Dhabi, and Tracy joins us now live from there. So how does Iraq exactly plan to make this happen, Tracy?
Sure, Youssef. It might not be as difficult as you think. Remember, this would be the second time that Iraq is selling independent international debt. That's bonds that come without a government guarantee in one form or another. They sold about $1 billion worth of debt back in August and were met with really incredibly strong demand. They had about $7 billion worth of orders for $1 billion worth of bonds, and that meant that they were even able to tighten the initial price guidance on that debt. Now, that said, there are a few potential challenges looming. We know, for instance, that Iraq is still talking to the IMF about receiving the next tranche of its loan. There are some questions from the IMF about the Kurdistan referendum, for instance. I asked the central bank governor exactly that.
Most of the targets that we have agreed on in the second review been met. The last discussion was more on the 2018 budget. And we have almost agreed on the figures we have there. And there's some questions being raised by them about about Kurdistan. And about some other details.
Right.
I think we are very close to agree on that. We brought that back to Baghdad for the government and for the parliament to be reviewed based on what we have agreed on in Amman in the line of the IMF program. I think the most important part that they usually focus on is to reduce our deficit,
right,
especially for the non-oil primary balance. And that we have worked a lot in that, because that can give an impression of how much we have reduced our expenditures and how much we have raised our domestic revenue. And they were, I can say, they are happy with that. But we, and also for them, we expect to do, of course, much on that.
So if you're narrowing the deficit, you have the right signals coming from the IMF. When would you expect to receive the next installment of the IMF loan? Because the meeting, the IMF board meeting will be in January, so we'll expect that in January. Actually, it was planned to be in December, but they have postponed their meetings to January. But that will be a payment for 2017. 850 million, is that right?
850, but then we'll get more from the World Bank and from the others, because usually they're all waiting for that to come. Positive reports from the IMF can give, a green light for everybody.
Right. Once you get one, everyone else comes in.
Exactly.
What do your financing requirements look like for 2018, and how do you expect to meet those requirements?
As I said, they focus more on to keep in line with the IMF program. For our expenditure, so we don't put more, or also for the domestic revenue. I think that's what we need to work very hard this year.
Right.
To increase our revenues from inside the country, instead of relying on the oil. There is some plans for that, like for the custom, for the taxes, for other services, for the power, for the electricity, which is a very serious one.
Right.
I think they have to work very hard on that to collect more. So those items that we have put sufficient amounts there, so the government has to work very hard to make that happens in the 2018.
Right. But what about more bond sales? Because you did have your first independent sale just a few months ago. Loads of demand for that debt. Would you do it again next year?
Yes, it is there in the 2018 budget. It will be 2
billion.
2 billions.
2 billion. Have you hired banks for the issue yet?
It's in process of. We have to get the approval of the budget first. Now we have some banks because we did it last year,
right.
And I think it will be uneasy to do it this year. The reaction was, as you know, was very good last year actually, so that will be that will encourage us to go for that.
What does the reserve position look like now?
Our reserve is at the desired level. Because still more than our local currency, Iraqi dinars.
Right.
We are comfortable with to cover all the imports and the needs of people. So still with the international standards, and we start seeing some increase in our reserves due to the increase of the price of the oil. So hopefully in the next years we will start rebuild our reserve again.